Shameless plug right at the start here, we have a Discord. You should join it and never post a single thing. I'll leave a link in the description below. In my last video, i.e. Devlog 0, I talked about my work on Project Gilgamesh from 2017 till 2021. For reference, Project Gilgamesh is the rhythm-parkour game I've been building solo for a while now. I now have a team, so I'm not quite solo anymore, but more on that later. In that time, I learned the right skills I needed to make a game in Unreal, but also wasted a bunch of time trying to make the wrong kind of game. This video is about how I learned what the right kind of game Gilgamesh had to be in order for me to build it, and more importantly, to ship it. It was late 2020, around New Year's Eve actually, and I was at a low point in my life. I'd gone through a pretty bad breakup and also had a teammate who'd been helping me out on the game step away due to personal issues in her life. Lots of abandonment issues, but even more troubling, as far as the game went, was the inevitable realization that this just wasn't working, and something had to give. I was trying to make a AAA game by myself, and the predictable results were slowly driving me insane. It's corny as hell, but I swear it's true. I had started meditating in order to deal with my depression from everything that was going on at the time, and the idea for how to pivot Gilgamesh in this new direction came to me when I was deep in a meditative trance. What?
You fucking dipshit, it should be a rhythm game! The timing of the rhythm game elements would naturally synergize with the parkour's goal of feeling fluid and pulling off combos and changing shit and moving through an environment.
Okay, it didn't happen exactly like that. I think I realized it when I was drinking some coffee one morning and staring at some code, but the meditative trance story is way better, right? Anyway, the point of all of this is that I realized that there was no way for me to ship a game that had any kind of traditional open world or hub world structure as a solo dev. That just wasn't possible. So to recap, Zelda? Out of the question. Dark Souls? Fuck no, what are you, crazy? Assassin's Creed? Audio surf? Wait a minute. This just might work. A game where I limited the possibility space for the game design by having a mostly linear progression forwards, like in an infinite runner, limited the variation in the camera perspective by having a more cinematic angle on the visuals and presentation, and explicitly directing the camera at all times, allowing for cheaper art assets and a lower production bar as we can cheat with things like billboards instead of high detail geometry. I still achieved the goal of the game design by putting the player into a flow state and being able to use the fractal visuals in tandem with the audio and the rhythm to allow for a synesthetic experience that was much more experimental and surreal. The TLDR here is that I realized that my biggest mistake was monkey see, monkey do. I'd grown up playing games like Prince of Persia, Planescape Torment, and Mass Effect, games that were made by large teams. I wanted to be like them so much it had blinded me to one simple fact. I just didn't have the same resources, and I couldn't compete with them in the same way. But there's another way for art to go when it can't be explicit and literal. It can become, instead, abstract and experimental, taking on surreal aspects to convey what can't be conveyed through literal text. And there are plenty of games that have done this before to light the way. Rez, Thumper, and Sayonara Wild Hearts are my prototypical examples of this burgeoning genre of rhythm runners. I'm convinced that there is a crap ton of game design in this space that's yet to be explored. But anyway, after this realization, I decided I was going to do one thing in order to prove my idea out. And if it didn't work, that was it. I was done. I'd be done with Gilgamesh, it had been a terrible time, and it would finally be over. So I got to work. I started looking into how to use and implement audio analysis, and then quickly realized I'm not close to smart enough to understand how that stuff actually works at a deep level, much less implement my own solution. So I then did a survey of the Unreal Marketplace to see what plugin solutions might exist for this problem. And I found at least a couple decent looking options. The audio analyzer by Parallel Cube seemed like it had a good set of functionality that matched what I was looking for, which at the time was mainly just beat detection. I wanted a plugin that could take a piece of audio, like a song, and tell me when a beat happened, with an event callback that I could bind to drive gameplay stuff, like spawning obstacles and moving things in the level, and so on. I got it set up, and I tied something really simple and straightforward to that event callback. On beat detected, spawn laser obstacle to jump over. I press play, and to my absolute delight, it worked. Well, kinda. Beat detection is a hard thing to get right, and any kind of attempt to do it algorithmically is always going to be a best guess approximation, especially at real-time rendering rates when you have to trade off accuracy for speed. But it worked. Like 75% of the beats were being detected and responded to. And another neat thing that the plugin could do was analyze the amplitude and BPM of a track. A small tangent here, but something really convenient about the shaders is that since everything is constructed from math and equations, it's infinitely easier to integrate audio data like the amplitude of a track into a shader. That makes it possible to do this. Something really cool about signed distance fields is that they can be used to create incredibly synesthetic geometry and worlds with relatively little pre-scripted efforts or content creation. It's procedural generation of a sort, and Sebastian Lag and Alan Zacconi have gone into this topic at length, so I'll consider it beyond the scope of this video, but it might be a good topic for a future devlog. Now, I had a way to gather audio data about a track and estimate the BPM as well. So the really neat thing about building a beat counter is that the math is a lot simpler than you might think. There are 60 seconds in a minute, yes? And 120 beats per minute, for example, is a way of saying that there are 2 beats every second. 120 beats divided by 60 seconds is equal to 2 beats per second. Now, if you wanted to figure out a timer that ran every time a beat happened, you need to know how often the delay is between beats, right? So instead, if you do 60 seconds divided by 120 beats, you get that number, 0.5 seconds, is our beat interval and the value to use in our looping beat counter timer. The general formula then becomes 60 divided by a BPM is equal to beat interval in seconds. Once the timing stuff is set up, it's pretty easy to figure out the rest of it, but I'll briefly describe my process. I was modeling my beat counter after the ones in Crypt of the Necrodancer and Hi-Fi Rush. The beats are indicated by the semicircles moving inwards towards the center of the widget, and their movement and timing was set up so that they reached precisely when the beat interval was crossed between beats. So to clarify, I spawn these semicircles every 0.5 seconds at the left and right edges of the widget. And in order to get to the center, they need to travel 100 pixels of total width, as in that's the width of the beat counter widget. And so the semicircles and beat counter icons need to travel half that distance from the left and right to reach the center in 0.5 seconds. The beat counter widgets are spawned from a pre-allocated pool that lets me be a little more efficient than if we spawn the icon widgets at runtime for every single beat. The icons are recycled and go back into the pool once they reach the center. And that's basically it. There's lots more I could talk about, like how to integrate the audio data from the analysis plugin into my gameplay and shader code. There's also a whole other tangent here about how I realized that CPU timers in Unreal are not close to reliable enough for the rhythm-based gameplay, as the audio engine does its own thing on a separate thread and you need a much more specific solution for how to handle that. The TLDR of which is use the Quartz subsystem in Unreal. I also fleshed this system out by building an interface layer in C++ that allows any actor in the world to be notified of beats and get a callback on the beat interval, which is how I then drive gameplay behaviors in the world. And eventually I ended up moving away from real-time audio analysis and looked into using the Synesthesia plugin, which is very aptly named, by the way. It's published by the folks at Epic, and it allows for non-real-time or offline audio analysis and caching that data, which allows for a better performance and much better accuracy at the same time. But that, as they say, is a story for another day. Thank you for watching. Go join the Discord, like and subscribe and all that, and let me know if this video was helpful. I wanted to be a bit more focused on technical topics for this devlog and would appreciate feedback on how it feels compared to the first. Till next time.